Welcome in the latest episode of Betting the Pitch, the NFL edition. It is the Super Bowl episode. And if you throw us some five-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify under the name Betting the Pitch, you might get a props episode. We'll see if we can get Andrew Schnicker together. And also, I guess I got to do a lot of work on props before we get there. But it is Super Bowl time. Andrew Schnicker, we are 4-2 so far in these playoffs. I think I'm a perfect 3-0. So I don't know what more to say about that other than I guess ride the wave or expect it to come crashing down. I'm not sure which one.
No, I mean this is your time to shine. This
It
is
is.
what we know this.
I
Although hey,
I wish I
go
would
ahead.
just take off the regular season, though. Unfortunately, that wouldn't make for a great podcast.
There will be time for bookkeeping and statisticals after this game. You know
Sorry.
what I mean?
I
Are you
didn't
okay?
because I clicked the Siri button and then decided to not even allow any more audio to come in. So we're doing
I
rookie things on this episode.
I was really worried that you just like froze on because you weren't moving, and I was just like, oh man, are we gonna have to? I know it's only been 2 minutes, but that's 2 minutes. We have to
Hey,
restart it
a
all.
lot can be done in 2 minutes, as Andrew Schwarzenegger might know
Careful,
well. Um,
careful.
or maybe I do. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll see in about 20 minutes how I do in 2 minutes, but we'll see. So on this episode, we're going to go through the one game. We're going to talk about how the Eagles and the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl. We're going to go through, give you best bets end of show, and stick around for that. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, we are farming out likes and subscriptions and five-star reviews because that builds the podcast and gets us in front of more eyeballs. And if you leave something with there, like a question or maybe something you'd like us to look at, like an entire props episode, maybe we do it. Underscore Snicker. So let's start with how the Eagles got to the Super Bowl, especially because they were the first game. You had the Commanders. I also had the Commanders, though it was not my best bet on this episode or our
Sure.
previous episode. Did three fumbles that were all scored touchdowns from, did that change the result in your mind?
No, the Eagles were dominant. Did it? Well, I guess we should ask, like, did it change who, like, in terms of the spread? It could have, you know what I mean? But I think like the Eagles, they deserve to be here, and um, to me, they've been the best team in the NFC, and potentially the best team in the NFL for most of the season. Haven't really lost a game when they were fully healthy since September. Jalen Hurts went out with a concussion, and that changed things down the stretch. But we talked about on this podcast betting against Jalen Hurts or betting, with our eyes that, all we could go off of what we'd seen from him the previous couple weeks, and he was really good against Washington. So I want to give him credit for that. And pretty much exactly what we said. Hey, prove it to us. We said that about the Chiefs as well, and they did prove it. So if I just keep going. I go back to 2 years ago in that Super Bowl, the rematch, and he was unbelievable in that game too. So, if that's the addition of Jalen Hurts we're going to get, then I think Philadelphia is going to win the Super Bowl. But in terms of that was just a clinic. Um, Washington played like the underdog, going for it on fourth down almost all the time.
Except
Um,
on that first drive when they
Except on
set
that
up
first drive
the
after going forward on fourth down like three times prior. Um,
I wonder
didn't
if Dan Quinn hit the Siri button and was just frozen and didn't have enough time to tell him not
have he's like,
to
all right,
put
let's
it
just
out
kick
there.
this thing. We've done enough.
Yeah.
It felt, and I can't steal this all the way. This was, I was listening to a podcast, a group like from the Ringer, and they were talking about it felt like a college game. Like Philadelphia just kept leaning on them with the running game, and I totally agree. Um, which sets up an exciting matchup for Sunday.
It
What do you
does.
think?
So, well, since I'm more of the host, I like to ask the questions, then I'll give
I
my
know, but
my
hey, we're
feeling.
just chatting here. We're just
We are just
chatting.
chatting. I think the was totally with you on the let's see if Jalen Hurts can beat us. I feel like that question was not answered because of so many fumbles. And
Mm.
usually if you lose a turnover battle, you lose in the NFL. In the playoffs, I'm sure it's even more vindictive, decisive. And when you fumble twice and then three times and they lead to 21 points, all those sort of things. I mean, they feel like 75-yard screen pass touchdowns at the end of a first half that somehow Texas nearly recovered from. But I guess we're crossing sports, and we don't cross pollinate on this episode that we do on the podcast network, Betting the Pitch and Apple Podcasting on Spotify at the Real _ G Warner on YouTube. But I think the big question for me is Jalen Hurts still? I mean, we've seen him be, I think he's elite at throwing the ball out of bounds and not taking sacks, but it didn't really work very well against the Rams, who forced him to stay in the pocket. Uh, I just don't know if we got really a full answer against the Commanders because the game got out of hand. First carry, Saquon was running by himself. I don't even know if he got touched. Bobby Wagner certainly didn't do anything to help his team or their cause. There's arguments about the health of the Commanders' defensive line and that really just being a pushover the whole game. But to me, I thought the Commanders were in it. I thought anytime you can get a team that's getting a touchdown of insurance and they're in a game with Jaden Daniels, I still feel like I'd make that bet again. But they don't all win, of course, and that one certainly didn't. I do think the Philadelphia Eagles defense has been legit, and that's what I think I was most interested about this team coming into the Super Bowl, and really throughout the playoffs and all that sort of stuff itself, and was really kind of reluctantly potentially going against them. But I thought 7 was enough on the Rams, which was relatively fortunate with some missed extra points. But now it's a different story here, and we'll get to the spread in a second. But are there any other areas that I mean, is Saquon against a really tough Chiefs run defense? Is that something that concerns you, or do you think it's a plug and play? He's going to get his 120 against everybody.
Um, no, I definitely think that's where we could get really into the total. Um, because
Well,
my
I'll say the current number.
yeah,
So we've got the Chiefs 1.5 point favorites. Total is 49 points right now, bet online.
okay. And how do you want to go? Do we just want to stick with just Eagles focus before we really start breaking down the game?
I would like to go Eagles, then we'll go Chiefs, and then
Okay.
we'll go point spread and total as the last portion of the show.
Okay. Well, so to answer your question, and yes, I wholeheartedly agree with the defense. Um, Quinion Mitchell had some was nicked up a little bit in that Rams game, and
Yep.
it didn't really seem to affect him. Um, I think like this may be a hot take, but I think like what the Eagles are going to face against Kansas City is not going to be any different than what they had to deal with Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden Daniels was playing at just such a high level that I think like if that defense it was able to somewhat corral or somewhat, create turnovers, somewhat create pressure, then I think that they're up for the task against the Chiefs. I do think Saquon, I mean, it feels so like just so square to just be like, yeah, Saquon's going to do it again, but like he hasn't. I don't think he's going to have the kind of game he had against Washington. Yes, I think you're right. I think that you know, their defense was put together with popsicle sticks and glue at points of the year. And Dan Quinn, I think, is a great defensive mind. And I think like, it was kind of a hey, let's get these pieces I'm familiar with from Dallas and let's get them into a 1 year deal. But it was not a middle of or it was basically a middle of the pack defense, maybe below middle. So I think Saquon will have a tougher challenge. I think the Eagles offense will have a tougher challenge. Man, I just go back to like 2 years ago. I know it's so long ago, and that game was just a track meet. It was awesome. What a game to watch.
So I mean, the thing to close up the Commanders, because they're not really, I guess, as relevant to
Yeah.
next Sunday, the 9th of February, 2025. To me, they were supposed to be a bad defense, and that was going to hold them back all season. Dan Quinn changed that. And then honestly, they seemed like a plus defense towards the end of the season. Who knows with injuries and all those sort of things and fumbles skew games. But to me, I thought Philadelphia, it just didn't look like they were getting stopped. And my kind of theory thought process is the Eagles start with Saquon, and until you stop it, they don't stop. And of course, you have when everyone's committed to the run, you have the options of throwing to incredible wide receivers and the tight end Dallas Goedert that performed really well, was seemingly getting chunk yardage every time that he was chosen to throw the ball to. And I think that's going to be a big tell on how that works against the Chiefs, because I think you start with a running game. We'll go to the Chiefs now. So they had Slobberknocker, an awesome game with Josh Allen, and his Bills entourage, and it was an awesome game. Could have gone either way. Of course, the ref stepped in. A lot of complaints about that, though. I'm sure if you had a Chiefs ticket, you felt one way. If you had a Bills ticket, or just really didn't like the Chiefs or weren't a Chiefs fan, then you probably felt another way. Um, I guess my question is, I mean, we've got a long time from that game to this, so I can't see any hangovers besides like injuries that might keep someone out. But I feel like everyone's doing the shot of Toradol to make sure they're playing in the Super Bowl because you only get one of those usually in your lifetime, unless you're the Chiefs because they're going for three straight. Do you think that we can learn anything from the Chiefs? Just seemingly to me, they had a dominant first quarter, it felt like, or at least first portion of a game. Then we're kind of hanging on. Then we're all the way ahead, look like they're going to blow the game out of the water, and then all of a sudden they get back in games. And I feel like we've seen that with the Chiefs really throughout their run to all these titles, is that they look great in spurts and then have some really average looking time. Do you see that same sort of thing? Is that a motivation issue in the regular season? Because we've seen it in the playoffs rear its ugly head.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of noise or statistical talk about the Chiefs dealing with a malaise in the third quarter. Been kind of a trendy topic to look at, and definitely against Buffalo, that was a similar deal where it just felt like they didn't really have much direction on either side of the ball. And think for their sake, they were able to stand up on those questionable or very close fourth down, third down calls. But again, uh, Buffalo, like Kansas City knew that Buffalo was just going to do the QB sneak, and they knew which side they were going to run every time. Like that was what they talked about in post game. And again, so this just goes back to like my disdain for Buffalo's coaching staff and just the waste um,
All right,
that
let
they've
me
created
change
there.
it from that. So before we get any flashbacks, for the Chiefs, I mean, I feel like what makes them so good and why they've won so many games that have been tight. They don't seem to blow out many teams, so they're used to those situations. Like that's one thing,
Sure.
but I also think they have some of the most reliable pieces in professional football, and we've seen that, especially with 15, their quarterback. It seems to me like, I mean, ever since he dislocated his knee, QB sneaking, they stopped doing that during the regular season, but they still didn't seem to go to it. Instead, they two naked bootlegs with him for 15 yards, and then they keep running the same play, and then the Bills try to stop that, and it opens up other things.
Yeah.
I feel like Andy Reid combined with Patrick Mahomes is just a match made in heaven, and
Yeah, for
that
sure.
will continue for a long time. The big question is I guess where do the Chiefs? I guess I mean will they ever pay for not extending a lead and killing a game
Mhm.
because they might not have. So my question is, are they able to? I guess in any Super Bowl, barring a 28-3 type of score, if you can get up that big, you're probably not going to lose. The big question is, are in tight games, I feel like we would expect the Chiefs, because they've proven it before, to outperform the Eagles. But if the Chiefs are behind or in a hole, that changes things. If
Yeah.
the Eagles are in a hole, that changes things too. I guess from a Chiefs perspective, before we get to the rest of the game, from a defensive standpoint, it seemed like they were really great at stopping the run. We already talked about them probably committing a lot to that because that's the Eagles' first plan, second plan, third plan, all plans until they have to resort to something else. Do you see that from a Chiefs offense against a Philadelphia Eagles defense perspective where we know what the Chiefs are going to be? Because honestly, I haven't seen much from their running game in a long time as a Kareem Hunt owner, and then being like, oh man, Isaiah Pacheco's going to come back and steal that job, and then literally has done nothing with it. Does that mean it's the Eagles rushing attack against the Chiefs defense, rushing defense, and then it's the Chiefs passing attack against the Eagles, or do we see the Chiefs as more balanced?
Well, let's go with we're talking about the Chiefs in close games and what their offense can do. There's no mistake. It's not just randomness. Uh, Mahomes does not run. He does not use his legs as much during the regular season anymore. That's not just like just by happenstance. That is intentional. And then in these moments, we can go back to previous Super Bowls. We can certainly look back to the overtime drive last year. We can look to obviously now a week and change ago against Buffalo. That's when he's going to run, and that's still where he's at his potentially deadliest at this point, because you commit so much to all these other resources that it's just hard to defend in an extra attacker like the quarterback running. So I expect to see him mobile again. I expect without the Eagles having their green dot at linebacker, I expect that to probably be pretty successful. Um, and Nakobe Dean is that guy's name. So yeah, I think the Chiefs' offense does change. The composition of it changes when we get to the postseason, and in these close games, I think it changes as well because it's just so hard to get them behind the sticks, get them behind like a sequence, and Mahomes can make up for it with quick little runs here and there. Um, but I guess we'll get to where the Eagles may be able to create some of that negative game state for them.
Where do they do that?
Well, with a dominant pass rush with only four guys, and that's what they've been able to do all year. Carter's um, dominance on the field can't be disputed. They've got just, and it seems like they have the juice to be able to play. I actually questioned if they were going to be able to not rotate during the Washington game, and they really didn't. Especially, Washington goes on that 18 play drive to start, and Philly's defense was able to take those punches and keep going. I think that if they can get pressure with four, and I certainly think they will be able to. The Chiefs' offensive line has been a question mark for me lately with some of the pieces that they've moved around. Um, so that's where it's where they could have some success. And obviously, I think they're going to be well aware that Mahomes is going to be willing to run. Um, I really like this matchup with Vic Fangio. That's one of my favorites. We've talked about him all season. We talked about him in the preseason. Obviously, I've got um, a stake on the Eagles in this spot from some of our future podcasts from the preseason, and so yeah, I'm definitely high on the Eagles.
Yeah. So again, to restate the number here, Chiefs 1.5 point favorites, totals 49. If you're not a member of BetOnline or SportsBetting.ag, they're running a campaign to give you a 50% match sign up bonus. If you want to follow the links to the podcast description, I have a podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube. Go click those links or slide in my DMs at the real_G Warner across any social media platform that exists. If I haven't found it yet, tell me and I'll sign up there. Even though I hate the handle, it is what it is at this point. Okay, so now we've discussed the spread and the total in this game. We'll give sides and totals at least as of Sunday, February 2nd, before we get off the show. But in terms of line moves, and I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit. So we did have some look aheads that BetOnline put out there. I was expecting before the conference championship games happened, I made lines for every opportunity or every permutation. And I was expecting the Eagles to be a 2.5 point underdog. We've never seen that. I think I initially saw it open at 1.5, climbed to 2, but it settled back at 1.5. A little bit more juice, just a couple pennies on the Chiefs side right now. Total has climbed from 46.5 in that look ahead all the way to 49.5, back down to 49, as you expect to see probably a lot of over money in the Super Bowl, last game to bet in the NFL. A lot of Super Bowl parties, and everyone wants something to root for, whether it's you have the 2 and the 9 at the end of each quarter or something like that, depending on how well your luck does. That's why I've stopped playing in squares because
Squares.
I would just always get numbers that just didn't ever seem possible. Or if I got good ones, then the safety would open the game in MetLife Stadium. Um, but I guess I'm a little bit curious on where you think this number moves. Is there just so much money that's gonna mean it stays here?
Hmm.
Let me rephrase. If the next move is to Chiefs -2 or to Chiefs -1.
Yeah, because that's where I think you're right. Like, I don't know if we're going to see a substantial number. Um, you were right. I was overly cautious with the Chiefs last week and took the money line at $1.31 because I don't like when we get to those tight numbers like that. And you saved some money on the juice there.
Well,
Yeah,
if you've been watching college basketball lately, it's not been money lines would have, let's say, been a little bit better of a
been
choice.
better for
Don't
you.
know over the long run though, and different sport, of course, where you can win by a
Yeah,
single point very frequently. But
yeah.
anyway, they love me.
Um, I do think, I'm still waiting for the real move. I had this at 2. So, we're a little bit farther off, but um, by
But what is a
half.
1.5 versus a two to
That's what I mean. It was like one and a
talking
half,
into,
two, and you had two and a half. What are we talking about here? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Especially but it could matter. It could be, especially like the way that the 2 point conversions change so much. And
Probably better for the Super Bowl squares. You could get some horrible numbers and it still works out.
and yeah, and if you're
65, there
the
you go.
tush push situation, um, those short yardage 2 point conversions, usually in those deals, if you get a procedural penalty and that moves it up. And anyways, we're getting really in the weeds, but like, why not? We got the time. Um,
Until we don't, but yes, exactly.
we have some time. Still got some time. So I think we're going, man, I haven't really thought about it this way because I haven't really cared as much if it's going to go to one or two. Famous last words. Um,
Because it really doesn't matter. But like, I think that does give an indication. We've played this
yeah,
game
of
a little bit
who's,
far this year of who the public or who is making. Because to me, public money isn't swinging this line. It's who's making a really big bet. Then again, a Money
yeah,
Mayweather bet doesn't matter, or Drake bet probably doesn't matter either. So I think it's got to be a lot of concerted efforts of pushing money in to move this number, which could happen. I mean, it's $4,000 to walk in the stadium right now.
yeah.
Expected from what I hear to get down to two before kickoff, but who's paying $2,000 for a nosebleed in New Orleans? I'm not sure. I guess
2000, that's not that crazy.
I mean that's a half 50% drop from now, so we'll see. But like even then, I don't really want to pay $200 to sit at the top of the Cowboy Stadium, so I don't know if I want
Well,
to be at the Superdome. And
I mean, I
oh,
would love to go like I feel like I need to go to the Super Bowl one time in my life, and it would definitely be nosebleeds, and it would certainly be at those
well,
prices. But I
don't
don't
worry. Once this podcast takes off, we get more 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Then we will be able to put it on the house. Although I did try to get a credential to the Final Four, and I got rejected. And I'm in a very long-winded argument from one perspective with one response from the NCAA currently. But anyway, that's another story.
know. I'll have to hear that story offline.
All right, one
Uh,
or two.
I think okay, here we go. Back on track. I think we're gonna go to two.
Okay,
I think we'll see two. The total for me is what's most interesting.
go on.
Uh, because at 46, that real like to me that feels short. I would probably, but then at 49, you're getting weird. Um, to me, 48's a
Washington. So hold on, hold that thought. So Washington, Kansas City was 49.5 from their look ahead
yeah,
numbers, which look aheads don't mean a lot. And of course, things change based on perception and how
yeah,
a team looked the day before, blah, blah, blah. I just feel like that's a nice little like line in the sand for potentially what could occur. We
right.
saw the Bills, Washington at 53 as a total. We saw Bills, Philadelphia 48.5. So like these numbers are essentially above what most was out there. And in the total game, I mean, it's really hard to say what's the key number. I mean, 7 times 7 is 49, but with 2 point conversions, you never know.
Well, that's what, yeah. Well, that's where we get into where we're talking about how it's changed with. I still think it's safe to go with 45s are a key, 48 is a key. 49 really you're not often getting just like seven straight touchdowns. You know what I mean? With the
Right.
evolution of kicking and so
And they're indoors.
yes. So yes, you're going to
Mm.
have the chance for more kicks.
Yep.
It's interesting to me though that at open that this was the lowest of those look at. You know what I mean? 46, which I'm sure was only available for $100.
Maybe five, but sure. Okay. Not
Okay,
50K, but you could
yeah,
probably.
yeah, yeah. Like to me, I wouldn't want to be holding an under here. Like I would feel
I
really
mean,
bad.
under's
I feel,
late for sure. If you're playing under on the Super Bowl and you're going early money in that, I feel like you are just you might as well just hand it
yeah.
over and light that money on fire for more entertainment value. Could win, of course, but I agree totally. If you want to bet under here, you wait. I guess let's say I think we're both assuming this goes over or money goes over, excuse me, and this number keeps climbing. We've seen some pushback or buyback from 49 and a half. Do you think it? Okay, here we go. Over under, I guess it's too simple to give it 50 because then you can push. So over under on this total closing 49 and a half.
Over.
I'm gonna say over also. How
Yeah.
high do you think it gets?
I don't think we get to 51 because if there people will be wait again 51 another one of those. Again, they're not key numbers, but there are more predictable landing spots. And so those 51 would be another one of those predictable landing spots. I
Okay.
don't think we would get 51 because I do think people modeling those kinds of like I don't think that they're getting to 51 with that number.
I think they're not getting 51 because every time it climbs, there's money that comes in to take a little piece.
Someone's ready. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think they should not do that and just let it keep climbing. But, I guess everyone just wants to say they got the best number. And it usually matters, except for the CLV bonfire that I see a lot of homeless men outside under the bridge with. Sometimes it feels like it might be me, especially with 16% on Kent State on Friday night. And they literally trailed by 20 the whole game. So there we go. -1 turns into -3.5 and doesn't seem to matter. But that's another cross-sport pollination. In terms of how you think this game will go, because I think
Yeah.
this kind of plays into the total. Um, if the Eagles run the ball really successfully, that means very few incompletions, and they are really great at managing the clock. And I would think that from an Eagles strategy standpoint, they want to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands as much as possible.
Yeah.
From a Chiefs perspective, I feel like they're more likely to throw the ball, and I think we see potentially more completions, more clock stoppages, and I wonder if that kind of if you think an Eagles successful offense caters to the under better.
Under.
So
Yeah,
that's
I could see that. If it's not chunk plays, the Eagles have been so great at explosive plays that the whole idea of run game would go under kind of changes a little bit of that. We saw that a week and a half ago. How many rushing yards did the Eagles end up with? But I totally see what you're saying. You're dealing with although again against Washington they didn't seem to care that they were going to give the ball right back to them. So um, I think you're totally right. I think you're spot on with both what both teams want to do on offense. We've talked about how the Chiefs' offense has really morphed back into a pretty spicy wide receiver core, and the way that they're using them all is is masterful. As like that's not really surprising coming from Andy Reid. Um, and so yeah, I think that you're going to see that quick game. That's probably you're gonna see maybe some zone read type stuff. And, Xavier Worthy was running the ball, so maybe some of those jet sweeps. Um, but yeah, I think you're gonna see passing from the Chiefs, and I think that that's smart. Where we talked about those pass rushers, um, they got to be able to hold up against that four. I'm really concerned about the left tackle situation
well.
with
So are we
Joe
assuming Joe
Tooney.
Tooney is still living out there? Because I know he's a left guard, but has moved to left tackle because their left tackle situation was so bad.
Yeah, yeah, they're not. I mean, it's obvious that they've given up on DJ Humphries. Um, and so Joe Tooney being the left tackle, that's a concern to me. It feels like you've kind of ruined two spots on the offensive line. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
um,
you can't rob Peter and pay Paul and have
exactly.
Peter and Paul both feel
Um,
happy with you.
yeah. So, but like if there's one team that's like, hey, we're aware of this shortcoming, it's the Chiefs. Like, you can't kill them. You can't like no one. You can root against them if you want, but like you got to give them credit. Like they know they're going to anticipate everything. They self scout perfectly. Um, for the Eagles, I think they're going to see success, man. Like I think whatever they want to do here, and I think the Chiefs defense, the secondary has gotten healthy again. Man, I'm forgetting the defensive back who's been back for the playoffs. Um,
Not McDuffie, the other one. Yeah.
no, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams. I really like their secondary. So it has again come into form at the right time. But like to me, the winning side of the ball, I think, is what the Eagles offense does against the Chiefs defense. Um, I think if the Eagles offense is able to move it, I think the Eagles are going to walk away with the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, before we get in there, and we do still have some time in this podcast. So, in terms of injury reports, it's very hard to guess. A little bit easier than college basketball when injury reports come out with starting lineups 5 minutes before games, but that's how life goes, I guess, in this world. Um, But we've seen some injury reports coming out. You mentioned Nick Bond, who seems like doubtful for this game, and that's a big problem with the green dot guy who has the speaker in his phone in his headset.
Nakobe Dean, is that what you're
And
talking about?
sorry, what?
Nakobe Dean?
N'Kobe Dean, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah.
Nick Bond also hurt, I think. Sorry. I'm conflating players now at this point as I frantically try to get the last update. But to me, I feel like from what we saw with the Eagles offensive line, and the drama that was going on between their center and backup center and saying,
Yeah.
no, I'm going out there, no, you're not, and the back being an issue. I feel like that's one of those injuries that 2 weeks off can really help. I also feel like that is a big, big boon for the health of Jalen Hurts' knee as well.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, of course, every day more for Kenny Gainwell is important, but backup running back is probably a little less of impactful, though certainly on kick returns and definitely he plays
Sure.
more than you'd think as a Saquon Barkley backup would. Though potentially more carries for Saquon might mean he's a little bit less impactful on his other carries, but also I feel like every time it's the ball's in his hand, it's a good thing. I don't know of really any injury updates that are really helping the Chiefs with this extra week off. We've heard forever Andy Reid off a bye week is incredible, and no reason to doubt that. Don't think there's any extra motivation from Philadelphia pushing him out of town way back when, but um, to me, it feels like we're going to get to as close to like as healthy as you can, and I do think that favors the Eagles. Do you agree?
Yeah, certainly agree. We could tell against Washington, he was not able to really cut. I'm talking about Jalen Hurts. He had a couple good runs where he was just straight ahead and there was a hole and he was decisive in it. Some of those others where he was having to scramble and he'd have to move it laterally, he would just give himself up. So I think, he was gaming. He was like a gamer out there dealing with that. But I think certainly 2 weeks is going to help. I think the Cam Jurgens, Landon, Dickerson swapping situation, super smart. Like okay, we've got these two guys who are not healthy, but maybe they can each give us a half.
Yeah.
Maybe we're gonna like give like okay, Toradol's getting this again. We probably should like be easy with that because we're not. I'm not saying I don't have no idea who's doing what. You know what I mean?
I'm just trying
But
to open up the avenue for when whatever Dr. Fogo de Chao decides that we will get brought in as the injury experts.
Um, but whatever they were able to do, say, okay, Landon Dickerson, you're not really a center, but he can make it happen for like a half. Then Jurgens can come in and finish it out. Like maybe they go with that again. Although Dickerson, it was a journey to watch
Yeah.
him
I
snap
mean, they
some of
were
those.
covering it really well. Thank you to Tom, who always talks about putting his hand in their center's butts, I think.
Of
But
course, right?
I think he's definitely clued into that scenario. Don't know
Sure.
if he's had work done, but every time, every woman I seem to watch the game with says that Tom Brady has had a lot of stuff done. I just think he's
Are you joking or are you serious?
I don't know, man. I haven't checked I figured it was all the supplements and the diet that he had that just made his
Diet.
skin glow.
That's it.
Um,
That must be it.
all right. Last thing before we get into picks
Okay.
is the just being in a dome. Usually you call that a fast track, if you will. There's one team that wants to spread the field, that wants to use their athletes in space and use as much space as they can on a wide football field.
Yeah.
The other wants to play smash mouth football that I feel like caters really well to an outdoor surface that is slick, that is potentially a little bumpy, muddy, if you will. How much do you think the track matters in this one?
Mm. Hmm.
It certainly helps field goals, but also helps
That's what I like. I think if you're
helps
looking
punt.
at the total, yes, I think that's probably the best point of it is that you're not worrying about elements with field goals. Butker to me is like, I mean, he's been super accurate. Props to him, but like some of the strength that I'm like kind of worried about his actual like leg strength there. Um, but he's not gonna have to deal with elements, I would assume. He's gonna be ready to roll. So to me, again, like I think both these teams are just like stacked with elite athletes. And I don't know if the Eagles are really just like, hey, we're gonna play Smash Mouth because to me that feels like, they feel like the underdogs and they have to like play really physical, but like their weapons, their athletes are are pretty lights out. So like I think another one we didn't talk about with AJ Brown is there's been talks about his health as well. Um, so I still think like it's probably going to benefit the Eagles to be able to get these athletes in space. I don't know like what else we're going to see. Like I know we all know Xavier Worthy is fast. We know Hollywood Brown is fast.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe I'm being naive to like what that turf will do, but I think it's a great point about the field goals.
Well, and we
Yes,
know Jake Elliott can't make 50-yard field goals, can't really make extra point
that's
time,
true.
making a lot of money. So it helps him to be indoors. I think we trust Harrison Butker to kick the ball through an upright any game, any place. He's
Yeah.
really struggled, I felt, with extra points over the regular season for a while, but that's not as important in the playoffs where it seems like the Chiefs rise to the occasion. So we're going to do sides, totals, and then we'll give it best bet coming end of show. If you're not following us, please do so at the real underscore G Warner at A underscore Snicker on Twitter. Go check out Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. Ask for us to do a props episode, and I will see if we can make that happen as we have 5 or 6 days until Super Bowl actually kicks off. Other than that, if you'd like to stick around for other things on that channel, please do. Our soccer podcasts come out multiple times every week. And before we run out of time, you got to pick a side on this game. Who are you going with? Chiefs, 1.5 point favorites.
All right, so let's go. This is just for our. This is not our best bet, but
No, it's not. No, it's not.
um I'll take Eagles plus 1.5.
I will too. And total 49.
Since we're taping early, I'll take over 49.
I'll go under 49. I'm not so
Okay.
worried about those points. So I do think it's better to wait. So A underscore Snicker for our playoffs record. We're 4-2 so far this playoff season. We were incredibly lights out last year. Trying to get back to that this year as well. 4-2 will certainly pay the bills. Where are you going for your best bet on this Super Bowl full game episode on Betting the Pitch NFL edition?
These numbers are so tight. Um, I think this is the annual monologue of, hey, just because it's a Super Bowl doesn't mean your betting size needs to get bigger. Actually, I would probably recommend going smaller most of the time with the Super Bowl, because these numbers are pretty perfect. What I will say right now, the only thing that I have something in the portfolio is I have under 24 first half. That's all I got. So we'll go with that for the best bet.
Hey, this is real underscore G Warner, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the Betting the Pitch NFL edition with my guy, A underscore Snicker. We're 4-2 in the playoffs this season. He just gave you his best bet under 24 and a half first half in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm real underscore G Warner, as I said, across all social media platforms, 3-0 on our best bets in the NFL playoffs, trying to keep that hot streak alive. But there's only one game left. And I do love early unders. Under 24 and a half first half looks really good. It probably gets better before kickoff, though it does seem the full game under seems to climb a lot more than the first half does. But I'll join in a short snicker, and we're going to try to see some punts, some teams feeling each other out. Yes, the early playbook might be a little bit better than the late one, but I think we see two teams figuring themselves out, and I think we see a better, I think, rested defense at that point. So we'll go under 24 and a half as a double best bet for the Super Bowl edition of the Bet and the Pitch NFL edition, a network, whatever we're calling it. I'm gonna have to redo that later. But it's been great with you for the entire season. And if you leave us some 5-star reviews, we might be able to get to another episode before the Super Bowl comes. Maybe some DFS talk, maybe some props, maybe some please don't let me. I'll say this now. Andrew Schicker, don't let me bet the purple Gatorade just because it went
Don't
down
do it, man.
a million on a million sites because everyone seemed to be in the know. Because that was something I will never live down more than the national anthem time that I did in college. Never felt like that ever again. But we'll be with you again potentially. Leave us some 5-star reviews, and we'll talk to you all really soon.